You're all clear to start now.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you may be. Thank you all for joining us. I'm taking over today for my colleague, Hanadi, who actually is down with COVID, a very common life issue these days, but we wish her well, and I'm glad to kind of jump in on this very exciting conversation. For your members who are with us, or CMA candidates, or partners, or followers around the world, if you know IMA, you know that diversity, equity, and inclusion are a very big topic and a very important topic for that matter for us globally. We've gone as far as dedicating extensive research to the cause because we know that it has many hurdles. And one of those biggest hurdles to diversity, equity, and inclusion is bias. We kicked off this series of roundtables under women's leadership to kind of trigger that conversation. So last week saw our India team speaking with people at the forefront of the industry, addressing biases from a variety of different angles. So last week we did India, this week we're in the Middle East, and next week and the week after we're doing Europe and Southeast Asia, just to kind of build up a dialogue, a very important dialogue that address many faces of bias. And today, obviously, the topic will be focused on, a variety of talking points. I'll take you through those, but I wanted to emphasize how important it is for us to put this on the radar and speak to people who have faced bias themselves and who are addressing it in their own right, in their own country, in their own companies, in their own governments. And it's really wonderful to see how much work is being dedicated in that direction and, bringing that to the light. So today, as just to kind of take you through the discussion talking points for today's session. So we're going to look at, we have three speakers with us. One of them could not join, but we have three speakers with us. I'll introduce them to you in detail. But the aim of this session today will be to identify biases and look at the frameworks that have been created within the workplace and the multiple skills and experiences that are needed to kind of promote that kind of organizational growth, because it's a fact that biasless workplaces have an improved state of well-being. They enhance employee and client retention, even attractiveness, and position companies as employer of choice. It is also conducive and integral to cultivating growth mindsets to benefit, from the opportunities that are there for and available from disruptive technologies. The only way to do that is to have your entire workforce contributing to, your innovative ideas and the progress in work. So we're going to look at how these three professionals have seen that within their circles and their organizations and their experience. And ultimately, this discussion will go towards contributing, towards closing the leadership gap within the workplace and disrupting that kind of status quo that impedes it. Because we are indeed pro a biasless kind of culture. So let me introduce you to our speakers today. We have three amazing women, and it's just great to see them in one circle. So Noura Al-Kahtani joins us from Saudi Arabia. She's a seasoned corporate director, and she served the Ministry of National Guard Health Affairs in Saudi for over 24 years. Her experience is focused on clinical operations, supply chain management, strategic planning, accounting, financial technology, and value-based healthcare delivery. Noura is an active member of IMA, the Government Blockchain Association, and the Certified in Healthcare Financial Management from the American Institute of Healthcare Quality. She holds 3 master's degrees, one in the field of healthcare and hospitality and hospital administration from King Saud University, medical sciences from University of Glasgow in the UK, and an MBA specialized in finance from the University of Leicester in UK. She's an advocate for women's leadership in the finance and accounting profession and is highly committed to directly and positively influencing cultures that value and respect diversity, equity, and inclusion. Noura is an evangelist for fintech, and she leads several initiatives to raise awareness of IOV, which is the Internet of Value, and blockchain distributed ledger technology, DLT, amongst financial and non-financial professionals. She also successfully led several digital transformation projects in healthcare, financial, and supply chain management, and has thus affirmed herself as a forward-thinking strategist, digital strategy implementer, and digital transformation advocate. Thank you for joining us, Noura. Impressive background, and we're looking forward to hearing your insights today. We also have We also have Nada Jamoul Msaiki joining us from Abu Dhabi. She's a seasoned finance and accounting professional with more than 2 decades of expertise under her belt. In her former role as Associate Vice Provost for Research Administration and Financial Planning at New York University in Abu Dhabi, she led the research administration functions, including sponsored programs and internal research grants, post-award, research ethics and compliance, undergraduate research programs, and financial planning at the university. She played an instrumental role in building a research administration infrastructure for New York University. She designed and implemented research programs supporting faculty and students and negotiated and secured funding to support the expansion and the academic and research programs that they have. Previously, Nada served as financial director for Abu Dhabi Education Council, known as ADEC. This role provided her with a front row seat to a period of extraordinary transformation within the education sector in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. Her contribution was pivotal in shaping the financial and budgetary policies and processes for the education sector at large. She also engineered the financial and contractual aspects of the public-private partnership project, whose purpose was to transform and improve performance of public schools in Abu Dhabi. She also spent a portion of her career with Sorbonne University, where she also led several reform initiatives, including ERP and student information system implementation, HR transformation project, and implementation of performance management. She started her career with Ernst & Young in Beirut, where she spent over a decade leading and managing audit and consultancy engagements in various industries. She's also very active in the research administration community. In 2020, she was selected as a member of the Select Committee of Global Affairs and the National Council of University Research Administration. She is a strong advocate of women empowerment, seeking throughout her career to support women in achieving their career aspirations while balancing their needs for a fulfilling personal life. She also designed and implemented mentorship programs for young graduates and early career professionals, and is currently a mentor with UN Women and NAMA, supporting female entrepreneurs in the UAE. Nada is a certified public accountant from the state of Illinois. She completed her undergraduate and postgraduate studies in business administration at the Lebanese American University in Beirut and her doctorate degree at the University of Manchester. We also have, thank you for joining us, Nada. Always enjoy reading your CV. Very impressive, and love the improvement initiatives behind it.
Thank you.
Anita Bat also joined us, Anita Bat Suchi. Anita is a global and finance leader with 25 years of catalyzing business performance at scale, demonstrated P&L performance, running multi-category, multi-country organizations, masterminding digital transformation, and proven expertise in building and leading high-performance teams across industry verticals of FMCG, pharmaceuticals, technology, and business services. Her leadership purpose is to ignite positive, impactful change through courage, curiosity, and service. Love that. She started her career in 1994 and has worked with Unilever for over 20 years across various business and finance verticals, 15 years of which have been in Hull, HUL, arguably one of India's best run businesses. In 2014, she became the first female VP finance in Hull's history. She has served as CFO for organizations like AstraZeneca in India and Hull's Home and Personal Care and the board of Hull's subsidiaries over the decades. She has spent over the past 6 years in global leadership roles, running group performance management for Unilever based in London, leading global commercial operations, finance, and procurement for Unilever, leading a team of more than 500 employees across operating centers in Mexico, Poland, UK, Turkey, India, Russia, Shanghai, and the Philippines. She currently lives in Dubai, is married, and has 2 daughters, very empowered, I am sure. And Anita is a language enthusiast who loves traveling with friends and family, watching movies and series. I don't know how she finds the time, reading books, and just chilling out for some me time. A wonderful panel, and thank you, Anita, also for joining us. It's a wonderful lineup.
Thank you, Ruba, to have me.
So let's jump right into it. We're talking about biases today, and I'm sure that as female leaders within your industries and across all of these diverse regions, you have encountered it on a one-to-one basis maybe, and I'll hope that we can share some of these experiences throughout this conversation. But let's get into it. When you look at biases within the workplace, where do you think bias comes from in a professional environment when it's supposed to be founded on the skills and the business kind of conversations? How does bias make its way into these? Nada, can you please give us your view?
Yeah, thank you, Ruba. Always a pleasure to be with you and with this esteemed panel. I guess like when you look back, bias exists, like, you know, it's through the experiences we lived through, you know, like the people we met, you know, it's just like, you know, all our experiences are shaped and we experience bias in many forms. I guess the question is knowing that bias exists and we all hold it, like no one is immune to bias. The question is, how do we deal with this bias? How to make sure that it won't impact our ability to see people around us and to interact with them? How do we see them as unique human beings with, you know, they have something to offer? And how do we just see them the way they are and interact with them and make the best out of our relationship with them? So I guess that's, you know, my 2 cents on bias. It exists, we have to accept it and just move on and see how we can make the best out of our relationship with others. And bias do impact, you know, as you said in the beginning, they impact organization in many ways. They impact people who are impacted by bias, their productivity is negatively impacted. And what I saw happening is when people are subjected to bias, it's not only them they are impacted, it's also people around them. Because when you are in a team and you see your colleague or your teammate subjected to bias, you can't but be impacted by this experience. And it will also like make you reconsider your choices, whether you want to stay in this organization or not. So the ripple effect of bias is not just people impacted by the bias, it's everyone in the organization.
I agree completely. And by the way, the science is behind it as well. I mean, they've gone down to granular level. Anita, what's your take on this? Where does bias come from? Even though
So I think I will
be on business.
So, you know, one thing we have to accept is we are human, and, you know, we have a map of who we are and, you know, what we value based on our experiences. So we all have bias and we have to accept it. You and I have bias. And bias comes, I think there are two types of bias. One is your own internal bias and the other is external bias, which you have to navigate. I'll give you one example. When I first went to my, you know, HUL, for example, is a really prestigious organization. And I went for my interview there. And I remember one of the panelists asking me a question and actually making a statement. When he looked at me, he said, you know what, I can't really see you in a factory. You know, he saw me dressed as like I was doing the interview in Bombay. He was basically seeing me as a, you know, metropolitan woman, you know, with a sort of, you know, savvy. And then he just felt that, you know, factory locations were normally in remote locations in India that I would not know about. And, you know, that was his take. And he actually made that statement saying that, you know, why should we hire you? Because I don't see you in that location. And I don't know what it was in my mind. I actually told him that, you know, but I can see myself. Okay, so that was one bias. But I'll give you another example, which was my own bias. When I had my first daughter, you know, I was pregnant with my first child. And my mother was a working woman, but, you know, somehow I felt I couldn't manage it. So I went to my boss and I said, you know, after maternity break, I'm thinking of taking a sabbatical. And he actually told me that, you know, Anita, nonsense. And this is, I'm talking 20 years back, when, you know, agile and all this thing was not there, computers were not there. You know, he basically said, Anita, that is nonsense. I will send all the files home, you work from home. So this is an example of bias which I had that I wouldn't be able to do, but someone else reinforcing to me that, you know, it's possible. So I think we need to break it with dialogue and with empathy.
Love it. I like that he kind of anticipated an era, your boss at the time. He created
20 years back.
Yeah,
exactly. It was unheard of.
Noura, where do you think bias comes from?
As Nada said, it's a natural phenomenon, so we need to accept it. And why we need to accept it? It's because it's a biological thing. It's in our brain, and it's not only related to a workplace or the life in general. Even in our scientific and research have provide a huge body of evidence for that. Bestseller, like the book Fast and Slow Thinking, It shows us as an individual a bias in our brain. So it's our brain, how it's formed. Now we accept that, we try to improve it. The social engineering or re-engineering is what we as a society globally, collectively trying to do within our communities and within our workplaces. Because biases, not only in workplaces, it's also in the wide society and community. Now, some people, they think diversity is a problem that causing bias, and it's not. It's actually magnify it and make it visible to see it. We come, and biasness is not only about ethnicity or gender or religion, it's actually maybe even your profession. So if you join a company full of engineers and you are an accountant, or let's say HR specialist, or let's say a physician, there will be a kind of biasness toward you because of the profession. Or if you are a community from Harvard or Oxford, you get the point. There is multiple reasons that people can different, if we want to define the term bias, it's when you treat it differently, either deliberately or unconsciously, and it's impacted you somehow negatively. So I think this is how it's manifests itself and how it's create an impact and how it's need to be examined as a problem, and also provided some multiple solution and strategy to solve it, because it's a problem and it's solvable to a degree.
Okay. Absolutely. And I think, these discussions that we're having now and the many that are happening around the world are going to be conducive towards that, driving that change. And now that you hinted that, that we talked about the impact of bias on talent, on the talent pool within organizations, maybe even to the fact of industries. I know that this has been a personal favorite of yours. I know you've done work towards that to kind of drive female interest in finance and accounting. So how does that bias affect that talent pool, and how does it affect the workplace in general when that is not tackled entirely?
I guess,
and tell us about your research as well, please, because you have facts and data.
Yeah, thank you. So I just, like, if you allow me, because I want to try with just a small example to counter Anita's example, because she was lucky to have someone who was supportive when she came back from maternity leave. So when I came back from maternity leave, I was working in audit. I was surprised that one of the partners decided that I won't be able to handle my biggest client then. So I came back, and he has took me out of the job and put a male colleague to manage that big job. And I remember I was like, oh my God, so you took decision on my behalf, you decide that I won't be able to handle. And I was at that time also facing pressure, not only from the organization, but from society, because everyone assumed that, when I came back, I had my baby, it means that I won't be able to continue in audit. It was a given fact. And I had to start searching for another career or take a career break. But that didn't stop me, obviously. It was hard. It was really, really hard. I mean, to stand up against not just your organization, the people you're working with, but the society and even the family sometimes. But it just makes you stronger, and you know that you have choices. That I think was the most powerful moment, when I realized that I have choices, that no one and no situation should put me down or put anyone down. So that's what kept me going. And yes, I had to make a career move. And it was a forced career move. I didn't like it. It was not my choice, but I had to continue. And I made the best out of the situation. But I guess, it's looking back, is what you do with those situations, and most importantly, how you learn from those situations to make sure that no other woman or no other man even will be subjected to this. So when I became a leader, I took it on me. That was my pledge to myself, that I will use everything I have, all the powers I have, to make sure that no one will be subjected to those biases, and those biases will not impact people or will not hold them back. And, you know, I was really lucky to be in those situations where I was able to influence. And when I saw that, you know, small action, how much they lead to bigger change for people individually and collectively, I think it makes every effort worthwhile.
Absolutely. And just because I kind of referred to that earlier, I was saying Nada also works with, you know, women and encouraging to work in the finance and accounting arena. I think that also was potentially inspired by this this background that you have. And kudos to you for taking that as a challenge and beating it. Anita, in your experiences, or you know, 20 years plus experience, 25 years, how is bias impacting the talent pool in your arena and the workplace that you work in?
So, you know, you have to make, you know, bias basically impacts diversity. Yeah, because then you sort of look for people who are similar to you. You look for, you know, confirmation of, you know, the beliefs that you have, etc., etc. So you have to first make a business case of, you know, why you need diversity and why bias is bad. Because sometimes, you know, bias is also an intuition that we have, and it, for some things, it might even be good. I don't know. But in diversity, certainly it's bad. And one of the things you have to think is, if you're a consumer goods company, for example, you need to make sure that, you know, the people who are inside the organization reflects, you know, our consumers. So if our consumers are 50% women, then we should ensure that in our organization, we have 50% at least women in some representation. Equally, if our consumers are, you know, across the D&E market, then in our management, we should make sure that we have nationalities which are across you know, different countries, etc. So it can't be Scottish, English, Dutch. It has to be Middle Eastern, Arabic, you know, Indian, Chinese, etc. So if we don't tackle bias, the issue is we will continue to have people who will be managing consumers who don't understand, and then we'll not be winning in the market, we'll not be creating value, and effectively not you know, having bias reduces shareholder value, you know, makes you irrelevant in a marketplace.
So it's actually impacts bottom line. It's
Yes,
bad for business,
yes.
Literally.
Yes, absolutely.
And Noura, in your experience, is it bad for business when there's bias in the workplace? Noura, can you hear me?
Sorry, sorry, I thought you were still carrying on.
No. I want to know your take. Did you agree that it's bad for business, and how is it bad for the talent pool?
Yeah. Again, as we discussed, you know, earlier, it is within any environment, the bias, and of course, all of us will experience somehow, especially if you know, spend in the workforce many years, which is unfortunately a problem for a lot of women. The main problem is that when you join the workforce, actually women, the research show that they leave workforce earlier. And it's because of issue that expressed also by Nada. You are now in an environment where you are here to fulfill your professional goals. But you are the primary care, I'm talking about women, and also some men, because you know, being a care provider is not exclusive for women. I have met in my life people with chronically ill parents or loved one or a member of family, and I would say sometimes or majority of the time it's also impact men as well. Also a newborn experience, it will impact men, not the same magnitude as women, of course, but you can see that there is impact. Now, how is the problem come when you are in a workplace that is not compassionate and it's quite dysfunctional for everybody? It make it worse for the vulnerable. And the vulnerable, usually the people who is in a situation where they need support from the system around them. So I don't want to go specific to my organization, but I will say it's like the majority of the organization around the world. Just recently, we start to take a deliberate action to look at our culture, to see how is the experience of our employee. And by the way, I want to acknowledge the support I received from our Director of Employees Experience, Ms. Nada Al-Wabel. She's from my organization. I want her to also to help us through a program or strategy. So again, if you do not work in your culture, if you do not have figures, if you do not statistics, if you do not define where is your biases come from, because it's not only gender, it's different type of bias, and if you do not have at least simple step to resolve it, then you open a stage for a disaster. So that's the way I see it, is that create an awareness, have some facts, or at least statistics, it's not fact, or at least observation, a better word to say it is an observation, have some sort of strategy, and make the culture good culture for everybody.
Before I move on to the next question, I just wanted to let our audience that's following us online know that your questions are coming in. We're going to allocate some time at the end of the session to answer these, at least as many of them as possible. So please do post them in the chat and we'll address them shortly. So you're talking about initiatives, Noura. I agree with you. It takes top-down kind of commitment to creating that change. And I'll be curious to kind of hear some positive examples from your end. The World Economic Forum's 2021 Global Gender Gap Report ranked the MENA region as the lowest in the world for achieving gender equality. So what initiatives and policies can companies, individuals, governments put in place to kind of bridge that gap and enhance women's progress? And if there are any initiatives that you can quote or policies, please do share those as those addressing the skills gap. And please let us know how, in your opinion, how effective these have been so far. Anita, we'll just shuffle.
Sure. So like I said in my earlier, point that, it's really important to start with the business case of, why we need diversity and, why we need gender equality in the workplace. So make the business case. And for us, the business case is that, if 50% of our consumers are women, then we need to make sure that, we have 50% representation. And then the second is we need to have tone from the top. So it has to be led by the CEO, the executive. It cannot be a bottom-up exercise. It has to start from the top. There needs to be hard targets, which people need to meet. And then you need enabling policies. So I think the enabling policies we had was childcare, people who come back from sabbatical, mid-career recruits, flexi working, work from home, maternity breaks, which were extended. So, from 3 months to 6 months, maybe in some countries, even 12 months. Paternity leave, because you also want to make sure that you change the mindset of men in the workplace to say that it's not the woman's job to do the unfair share of unpaid work at home. So it's equally a man's responsibility or accountability to bring up a new farm. So we had parental, paternity leave increase from 3 days to 3 months, where they could take paternity leave for 3 months to look after their children. Job sharing, if women couldn't work full-time, job sharing. And then, so lots of support and portals, and more importantly, a dialogue, because I think when you start doing this gender equality in the workplace and you say that, we need to recruit more women, it almost becomes like, yeah, you're a woman, so you're going to get the job. And that's actually demeaning to a lot of us who are working very hard, making a lot of sacrifices to be where we are. So I think none of us would want to be like, oh, we are a charity case, so, let's get the job. That's not where we are. We make a lot of sacrifices. Each one of us sitting here on the panel, everyone who's on the call knows what kind of sacrifices they've made to be there. So I think having that dialogue about, what's important, having the unconscious bias training, both for men and women, so that people start becoming aware of, what the impediments are. In fact, when we opened the childcare center in Bombay, a lot of people who are actually using the childcare were men, not necessarily always the women. So, and a lot of the men started taking paternity leave. They started understanding how important and how difficult it is. And then they start understanding, what Nada was mentioning when she comes back from maternity break, that, she shouldn't be given a short shrift of, not getting the jobs that she had. So it just makes you more aware. And I can share with pride that in Unilever, 2011, we started with, for example, just in North Africa and Middle East, we started with 20% gender representation. And with all the policies that we have put in place, including, for example, we have menstrual leave, to remove the stigma around, women, and the fact that, and there was a dialogue around, why this is important, both with men and women. And from 20% in 2011, we got gender representation today at 42%. But that's not good enough for us, because we're still not at 50% in the region. Whereas in Unilever globally, we are at 50%. Even in South Asia, we are still not at 50%. So in MENA and South Asia, we're still lagging, and there is work to be done. Certainly in functions like sales, supply chain, where, gender representation is not as much as it should be.
But brilliant. I mean, you doubled your capacity, which is fantastic. Says a lot about Unilever. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Anita. Nada, what are some of the initiatives that you're seeing, and how effective are they?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Anita on what she said and the initiatives that are effective. But I guess, achieving gender equality is a journey and not a destination. So it really takes time and concentrated effort. So targets do help, absolutely. But I think what I would add is the accountability framework. Meaning that what happens if we don't reach the target? How do we celebrate the people who really push forward for this agenda and achieve those targets and exceed those targets? How do we celebrate them? Because we can't just assume, as Anita said, that it just happens. I mean, this is really, really big effort to achieve the 42% that she referred to. So celebrating the achievement, making sure that the heroes are recognized, but also at the same time, where people do not achieve those targets and work against the agenda, there will be consequences. And unless, people see that there are consequences for good behavior and for bad behavior, things will continue to be, we can progress, but not at the pace that we need to progress to achieve the true gender equality. Another thing I would add is I witnessed, there are institutions on in my career. I didn't know that it's called mentorship, but it's because I lacked, when I was growing in my career, I wanted someone to really guide me, to give me that one-on-one attention, and I didn't find that. And when I was in a position to help, I started doing that with, everyone who was working with me. And I found the power of really taking the time, sitting with the person and listening to their needs and giving them advice that is for them, and not like a general advice that would be good for everyone. It's great, but then just taking the time and making sure you can really drive their journey and guide them through their journey in whatever they want to achieve. I mean, sometimes it doesn't have to be that I want to be the next, I don't know, manager or leader. Sometimes they just want to pursue a master's degree and they don't find the time or the means to do it. I think that's really powerful, and women do need that mentorship and sponsorship, guidance, whatever organization call it. I see that more and more these days. I do think that a structured program, it's, people do it, but having a structure and having, people contributing to others people's success is really important.
I loved when you mentioned mentorship. By the way, everyone shook their heads. So I see the power of mentor. We have to stop at mentorship at some point. But before we get on to mentorship, Noura, you're based in Saudi and you are Saudi, and God knows the world has seen tremendous government level initiatives to support women. It's even part of the country's strategy. So can you tell us how's that on the ground, seeing women empowered at that level and seeing it committed top down, but like it doesn't get any more top than that. Can you tell us how effective that's been in your arena, please?
Sure, Ruba. But before we jump to this, I want to really go back to 2 points. You highlighted the mentorship. There is a point that Nada said, and I really want to re-emphasize it, which is when you reach the top, and what is the post holding that senior position? It's not only a celebration, it's also to minimize the cost. Research show that comparing women and men who reach the same level, it didn't come with the same cost. Like the sacrifice that women made throughout their journey is so expensive, either to compromise in their personal life or the choice of having children, and not only children and family. It's the research go further and show that there is sometimes, even when you reach, it's with a lot of course. So I really want to emphasize on that one. Back to your question and the initiatives and their impact. Okay, before the last 5 years, which is the transformation that everyone talk about, the journey of Saudi Arabia is really very progressive. Like during the late during the period from 2000 to 2015, the late King Abdullah really made a decision, like the quota. We have a shura, which is equivalent to a parliament. 30% are women represented, and it was the highest in the world. Now, and that maybe in 2007 or 8, I really cannot recall, maybe Nada will correct me, but it's really not something recent. The contribution of women is major, and women, even during that period, were able to elect and also participate in election, because we have some kind of municipal election in your neighborhood or in your cities, where you serve your community. So you can elect a woman, and women can also vote. Although we are a monarchy, we are not a Democrats. And I see a woman really impact their society. I will mention one lady, and she's a businesswoman in her community, Huda. She's one of the, I wouldn't say her full name because I really don't want to, but you know, I take it as a personal name, but she's one of the people who impact. Now we go to the policy in general, which is you see coming. One of the things is that you have a dedicated deputy of minister, and we have Ms. Hind Zahid, and she's taking care of all these issues. Beside the government, the private sector should help, and I have witnessed also participation from private sector. It's too early to really assess the impact, although there is all these are included. Also individual, like myself, I participated, and also many of like me participated in circles, like Lean In Circles, which is started by Shirley Sandberg. And we have in Riyadh, I think 10, one of them for KPMG. One of them, I was an active member, and we have 150 members, women in them. So just to summarize, everyone can contribute. The society, the private sector, the government, the whole nation, the whole world actually. And of course, I started with IMA, a long journey. I think IMA with the Women Leadership Series provide a lot of awareness to my community and my region and my country. And I'm so grateful. And personally, I learned from that.
Thank you. Amazing. And it's nice that you also gave us some background on the progressive history of Saudi Arabia. I mean, we do note recent changes, but you're one of these empowered women, Noura. You have 3 master's degrees, so definitely that comes from a rooted state of empowerment. So it's wonderful to see that manifest. Thank you for sharing that. We do have to come back to the mentorship point in more detail at the end. So bear with me. Women in leadership roles in financial services firms accounted for 24% of all positions in 2021. And this number is only expected to increase to 28% by 2030. And this is still well below parity. According to a Deloitte report, the gap between women in executive jobs and women in senior leadership roles is currently at 9%. This fact states that unless we increase our efforts right now, the gap will only become wider. So what do you think the obstacles to reaching that parity are, and what can be done to address them, both on an individual level or on an organizational level? I'll jump to you, Noura, just to kind of reshuffle the state of response.
Sorry again, because I was really not focusing. I'm trying to adjust something for the chat. So if you could repeat the question again.
No, of course.
And sorry for that.
No worries.
Sorry for that.
We're just basically looking at the kind of the gap that exists and kind of impedes the progress of women on the way to in their careers to the top. So the leadership gap, and that the numbers are still very little and minute. So for example, the increase that is expected from 24% today to 2030 is only to 28% of women in leadership. We're talking about finance and accounting profession. So there was a Deloitte report that stated that gap between women in executive jobs and women in senior leadership roles was 9%. And that unless we act now, this is only going to become worse. So what can we do? And we're talking about individuals, professionals. What can they do, and what can organizations do to kind of address this today?
I think the first step is really to ask the question, and to repeat asking this question in so many ways, in so many forms. Why we have this gap? Because bias is something that really hidden. No one is aware of it. Again, I really go back all the time to the famous TED Talk of the CEO of Facebook, because it's really created impact. Even and also the amount of awareness that she created with her book, and also with her platform and with her circles. She started with a question. If you see the title of the talk is started with a question. This question, if you ask this question, because this will lead you to multiple figures and answers coming from that. Most of the bias is unconscious. Even herself, she mentioned that during giving the talk to the staff of the Facebook, women raised their hand, and also men raised their hands, and one woman or few women put their hands down. So every woman in that room put their hands down. So after the lecture, which is again about women inclusion in the workplace, and the same TED Talk she spoke about. The lady, she went to her in her office and she said, I learned something today, that if you put your hand, you will not be picked as a woman. And she acknowledged that only men, she picked only men. So we are unaware of this biasness, you see. So let's say we are educated, we are accountant, we have awareness. It will stay with us if she, who is really worked a lot in the project or in the subject, and she is a senior in her company, and she gave the same talk she gave to the public or to the world, and she noticed that she's herself biased, and she's a strong advocate. So I think this is one of the core things that we want to look at it. And we need to say, okay, because I personally, and I'm not sure about Yoruba or Nada, maybe Nada and Anita, maybe they faced in my career, I didn't see something really in my face. Like I never been deprived by an opportunity or anything because I'm a woman. I do not recall myself being in that situation. But of course, maybe it did happen in multiple forms that it's hidden for me. So you see, where is the complexity of the issue, Ruba? So that's why we need to ask, if we all call for the equality and the great workplace, why we, end of the day, have a low number of women around the world, and also the gap increasing is not, we do not decrease the gap. And to be honest, I went with this same question to Nada. She is our employee experience, and I asked her, I said, our environment really is really, there is, I feel that it's accommodating women and also cultures, because we are a multicultural organization. We are very inclusive. But when I see men in the top and also in the board, and they are the majority. They are the majority. There must be something that we need to look at. And that's why we need to call expert like her sometimes. We drop the question and we search for it.
Thank you. I mean, that kind of also that also puts the responsibility on individuals, that they are allowing that bias to kind of impede and place itself as an obstacle in their progress. Is that what, do you concur, Anita? How do you find, what are these obstacles that are standing in the way? And some of them, those individually based ones, is it kind of self-inflicted?
So, so Ruba, now I'll reflect on my sort of 25 years of experience and, my rise from being a manager to, let's say, the CFO I am today. Now, when I look at the first 15 years of my career, right, and I think what helped me move ahead was my work ethic, my passion, my individual excellence, my ability to deliver the goods, hard work, all that work. And, it enabled me to, let's say, become a director. Now, what happens normally is that, by the time you're at the peak of your career, you have motherhood, you have kids. And then the question that you ask yourself as a woman is that, okay, do I have the intense desire to become the CFO? So I think first and foremost, and at that time, if I take my example, I actually took a career break. At the peak of my career, when I got to become the director, suddenly it felt like, oh my God, I'm not really giving the time and energy to my kids. I need to travel. And I had this whole guilt feeling, which I had to manage. And, my response to that was, okay, let me take a sabbatical. I know my boss prevented me at the time when I had the kids, but by the time there were 3 or 4, I took a sabbatical at the peak of my career. And then I said, for me, it's important family, and I took the break. And then when I took the break, I actually found that, that wasn't as fulfilling to me as I thought it would be. I really wanted to be economically productive. I was doing stuff for my family, which I would have normally done. So sum in short, I wanted to get back into, let's say, the rat race, and I made my way back. Now, I think there are 2 angles to the question that you're asking on, why women don't make from executive to senior executive. The first one is individual. Do I feel the intense desire in me to be in the board? And that intensity of desire has to be intense. It cannot be 50%. It has to be like deep within. If you have that, that's the first barrier you have to cross, right? The second barrier you have to say is that the criteria changes. Between the first 15 years and the next, when you want a seat at the board, the criteria changes. And what's the changing criteria? The changing criteria is first, networks. And, women see networks as, a bad word, but actually you have to wire your mind to say it's a positive thing. Getting connected with, let's say, a Noura, Ruba, Nada, for me is the network. It's a women's network, it's a peer network, professional network. You need to increase the network. That's first. Second, how much experience you have in different parts of the world. Because especially if you want to become like a multinational leader, a global leader, you need to make sure that you have traveled and worked in different parts of the world. So, you have to make that. Communication, your ability to lead a team, without authority. All of that becomes really important. And women need to really And women actually have inherent skill to do that, by the way, because we have high EQ, but we need to make sure that we are upfront and we play that role. And then, of course, there's the organization bias, because women who are assertive and aggressive will be said that they're aggressive. Men will say he knows what he knows.
They're
So
determined.
there's that bias. So there's individual. You have to recognize that there's a criteria that changes. And last but not the least, I'll come back to the mentorship question. Women are over mentored and under sponsored. So at the middle management level, there's a lot of mentoring, great, but you need sponsorship, because you have to make that glass ceiling, and it's difficult. And trust me, it's difficult. I've faced it. And it's not because of, I don't know whether it's biased, but the best person won. And it wasn't me in many cases. In some cases, it was me. So when I won, I shouldn't say, oh, wow, yeah, everything was fair. But if someone else won and it was man, I can't say it's unfair. So there's that, and you have to ensure that you have sponsorship of women at the highest level, who are then sponsoring you, mentoring you, and making you, giving you the right attributes that you need to work on to hit the C-suite.
No, that's brilliant. I love that, because it kind of takes it past just the mentorship. It's like you can mentor as much as you want, but unless you create that passageway, it's obsolete.
And
Nada,
what I have done is I have sought out mentorship. So, I've gone to the CEO of HUL and say, I want you to be my sponsor. I've gone to the business group CEO of, one of the business groups of Unilever and say, she's one of the most powerful women. And I went for an interaction with her and I said, can you be my sponsor, please? I would love to have an interaction with you. I want to meet you 2 times a year. And, you need to create that space. And sometimes we don't do it. I didn't do it. I learned it the hard way, and now I'm doing it.
Wonderful. And Nada, how is that from your perspective? I mean, bridging that skills gap, not the skills gap, sorry, bridging that gap of, reaching to the senior level. What's it going to take? What are the obstacles and how do we address them? And what do you think of also what Noura and Anita said about the individual claim your place and don't let anyone stand in your way?
Yeah, no, definitely. I can't agree more that it has to start with oneself. You have to have that urge. But I just want to maybe continue on Anita's thought. I was talking to a friend recently who works for a big HR consulting, and they were engaged by one of the big financial institution to create a program to support the middle manager woman, because they were facing, I think we've achieved better equality at the entry level, at the recruitment level, but where organizations are stuck in the middle management, and why women are not making it to the top management, why they are leaving. So this bank had a big challenge. They engaged with them, and they wanted them to create that program, mentorship program, leadership program. And what they had done is they've asked manager to nominate women individually from each team. They came up to the consultant with a list of 65 names. And they thought these are the high potential, we will put the program. So the consultant decided to take a different approach. They said, okay, we'll take this, but we want to create a self-nomination. We want women to self-nominate. We have a criteria, and we want to open it up and see what we'll come up with. And guess what they came up with? They came up with 400 nominations. 400 nominations, of which and the organization was stunned. They didn't know they had talent. They didn't know it exists. Women came forward because they had the opportunity to come forward. There was a culture that it's okay to come forward. It's okay to raise your hand and say yeah, I think I can do it. And they had to change the whole programs from the initial 65. I think they only took maybe 15 or 20. And all the rest of the program were from women who came forward. So I guess creating that culture in organization where, it's okay to come forward. It's okay. There's nothing wrong to be seen as yeah, I want to make it to the top. Help me. And I love Anita, go and I want a mentor. I want a sponsor. I think some organizations have gone a long way in creating structured program, structured sponsorship. I was talking to a friend from FedEx, and they have beautiful program for sponsorship and mentorship to really move women forward from middle management to leadership position. But these have to be concentrated effort. They have to be like, structured. There have to be a leadership endorsement. It can't just happen. I mean, organically, you can do stuff, but unless there's a leadership endorsement and a tone at the top, I think, progress will be very small. I just want to add one more thing, because you said it's dear to my heart, like having been in the audit profession, particularly, like, I know financial and accounting has many aspects, but the audit profession, and I mean, looking back 17 years ago, I was really forced out of this profession. It was not my choice. And I really don't want to see more women being forced in those choices. And I see that happening to this day, every single day. I see so many women being forced out of this profession. And I think if I look back, when I was looking at the question, I wanted to see like what's really driving this. It's the bias that in this profession, when you work long hour, it means you work hard. And this behavior is completely compensated, celebrated, you name it. And when you have women who have to, attend for a child, or even, have faced some personal problem, and they had to take some time, to attend to a sick child or go pick up their children from school, automatically they are seen as they are underperforming. And automatically their chances of being promoted and going to the top are become slim and slim. And I guess, unless, to Noura's point, we ask ourselves what is really driving this, why the numbers are so low, why women are leaving, they're reaching middle management and they're leaving. There's something that needs to happen. There's frank conversation that needs to happen, and there's action plan that needs to be put in place to reduce that bias.
I mean, you say this, I agree, Nada, this exists as part of an ecosystem. You have coworkers, you have managers in there, you have leaders, you have corporate cultures. What can, say, coworkers and managers, what can they do to eliminate that bias? Like, how can they physically contribute? If we were to break this down to actionable kind of measure, what can be done?
I think you start by oneself. You model that behavior. I mean, you just like, when you are a manager and you tolerate other women like leaving early or not coming to work because they have some personal issues to attend to, and it could be woman and man, and you don't penalize them. In fact, I mean, I literally forced so many of my colleagues to leave work because I knew that they were not in a position to stay that day or that week. And, guess what? They continue, they deliver, they even deliver better. And one girl, one co-worker came to me, she told me, you know what, like, you don't realize that by doing this, you kind of inspired us when we became managers to do the same for the people, because they came with the idea that, if you have to take the day off, like, people will look at you like, and they would say, oh, you're not performing. But when you made it feel it's okay to take the day off, it's okay to say, I'm not feeling well and I can't come to work today, but I will make it up tomorrow, after tomorrow. This is how they deal with their with their teams. And this is the culture you created. It's a snowball effect. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, you do one small thing, you do it with passion, and you're genuine. I think people understand when you're genuine or when you're not. And it will have a snowball effect.
Noura, thank you, Nada. Noura, how can, co-workers and managers, how can they contribute? What can they do, in your opinion?
Before the contribution of the co-worker or the people around you, I really want to re-emphasize a neat point, which is your career is separate from your performance, and your career is your core responsibility. You are accountable for creating your career path. Of course, within your organization, there is a career path for everybody. It's part of the policy and procedure of any decent organization. But end of the day, it's your responsibility. So before I add to
Very
the
empowering
burning
idea.
yeah, it is. And with and Anita really, when she speak to me and she speak, you know, I really don't want to dilute her message, because I really want to re-emphasize it. Burning desire. A lot of women do not have that burning desire, to be honest, because if you're passionate about it, you will go and find it. There is two types: the go-getters, and most of them are men because they are competitive by nature and by biology. They have a testosterone and they participate in competitive sport. Whereas women, most of them, they lean toward more collaborative. It's ideally, even kids, when you start training them for life, you train them to pick two sports. One, to be able to deal with a group and collaborate, and one where you individually, as an individual, go and compete to beat other people's hands and win. And there is nothing wrong with winning. There is nothing wrong with it. And some people really do not have a sense of what's wrong or right. And it's in a lot of society and community, they mix up values and ethics, and they complicate it for themselves. So again, it's your accountability. You need to have a burning power. You have, if you cannot find an opportunity with an organization going vertically, go horizontally within your organization. Transfer or transfer out. You know, so I usually say you have to move. The plan is to move. Either you move up or move out. If you go and wait, and I call them the waiter, because they assume, because they perform, and this is especially not with the leadership and the middle line, it's actually the first promotion you have. It's within the staff. A lot of the staff, sometimes they keep quiet about it. They never go and ask for a promotion, never talk or negotiate, and they feel it's wrong. So this is one, and to make it short also, she mentioned something very key. Not only mentorship, but sponsorship. Men all the time go and cut deals. And there is nothing wrong with cutting deals within your end of the day. It is something that you have to wear the persona of the politician, where you go and lobby for your interest, your value, and also the risk, to minimize your risk. There is nothing wrong with it, provided that you earned it and you have a performance and something to back it up. So this is, I feel that women should really change that. And also the self-image. The self-image is sometimes when they throw confidence, women really do not want to talk about it because they feel they are as confident as most of men. But I would say it's not only the self-confidence, it's the self-image and the appreciation for your skills. A lot of women, they do not really know the value they contribute. And it's not only men, to be honest. I met a lot of people, even, I don't want it to be specific to gender. I met a lot of employees, I would say they are more or less the same as women in the same criteria. It's something that need to be educated in or raise awareness about. For God's sake, some people even do not have a retirement plan, let alone a leadership plan. And grooming, men really love to be groomed. Groom others and seek opportunity to be groomed. And there is nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
And take risk. Take risk.
Take risks. You know, we say take risks, but I'm just reading in the chat because we have to eventually migrate to the questions in the chat, but we talk about taking risks, we talk about taking ownership and being more kind of committed to our goals and the growth of our career. There's someone on the chat has said they've been working for 11 years for a private company. After spending many years in the professional life, they're still not able to become more confident and they have a lack of leadership skills. How does that play in with, and then she's wondering, like, I think it's Zaytun would be maybe a lady, I wouldn't want to assume, they, that they want to take a stronger step in their life. Do you think this is where mentorship steps in? And then on that note, if you can also expand on sponsorship, because someone also asked about sponsorship. And I think this is a good point to kind of cue that in. So maybe I can jump into Anita. And Anita, you could talk about how can someone become more confident in their skills? And then how can we sponsor them to take them to the next chapter of their career and help them to grow? Can you change someone's ability to be confident in their skills and become more daring?
So I think my instinctive response to that question is, first of all, self-awareness. What are you good at? What are you not good at? Have you really reflected on it? And self-awareness in the context where you want to go. And for that, you have to ask the first question: do I want a job? Do I want a career? And there are two different paths to these two. A job, you will try and excel in that job, you will do your best, but you will balance it with the other priorities that you have in life. And that's absolutely fine to do, by the way. And for a career, you will need to make some sacrifices. There will be some pain. You don't necessarily have to suffer, but there will be some pain which you'll have to deal with. So what do you want? Then self-awareness about what do you have and what you don't have in the context of what you want. And then actively seeking it out. So I have found it very powerful to get feedback. And every time, whether I'm a line manager, whether I'm a subordinate, I always go to my line manager and then say, okay, give me feedback. What am I going to do? And normally, people don't like to say bad things. We are good human beings. We like to say nice things. Mm-hmm. And you have to then give them permission and say, it's okay. Just tell me where I did wrong. So that's one way of asking, get feedback. The other one is, which I found very powerful, is have a sister circle. In India, we call it the Mahila Mandal. It's basically a normal for ladies club. And if you have a small group of friends who are, like you and, who are dealing with similar issues like you, then, you get a lot of valuable feedback from them. And, it's not you won't be very defensive because it's coming from friends. That's another way I found that you can. And then you have to do the hard work of either upskilling yourself, because where does lack of confidence come? It comes because you are in an unfamiliar territory. So then you need to build knowledge on it. Or, for example, earlier I used to hate making presentations. I really do. And then you have to just make yourself uncomfortable, get out of your comfort zone. Do the things which make you comfortable, and over a period of time you develop the confidence because you realize it's not as difficult as it is. So you need to do stuff which is not in your comfort zone. You keep doing that, it'll feel very uncomfortable, and then you'll get confidence, you'll get leadership traits, and you can move on.
Thanks, Anita, because you kind of also answered Nestle's question. She said that she's a big fan of yours and she's been watching your career and she wanted to get your take on what to do to kind of grow up the ladder. I think you answered her question already.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Safdar Akbar, before I move on to the next question, do any of you want to add to that bit about the mentorship versus, sponsorship, and if it can help you break through your weaknesses and the challenging obstacles in your own individual skills?
Yeah.
Nada,
I think seeking mentors is very, very important. Some organizations have this in their DNA, and employees have access to mentor, whether structured or unstructured. But where I feel like we can all play a role is reaching out to the underserved woman and man out there and young people. We can all play a role. It really doesn't take much. Few hours a month, it's not much if we give from our time to people, to women, again, young people. I created a mentorship program to support young graduates in Lebanon, and the impact it's having is massive, really massive. How much people, if you get the from perspective both of the mentors and the mentee. It's not only the mentee who benefit. As mentors, you benefit also because you give a part of yourself, of your life, you just like remove the mask and, be there for another person, guide them in their journey. And the power of being able to, positively impact someone's life. I mean, if we can do it only for one person in our lifetime, imagine the impact it could have, not only on that person, but also on their families later on and their kids. So I guess for everyone, they should not be afraid of reaching out. I mean, I've had people reaching out to me on LinkedIn. I don't know them. Like they just read and they send me a message. Can we ask
They're
a question?
drawn to the light.
Yeah. So I guess we can all play a role, and people should not be afraid of seeking people, people who inspire them, to give them advice and guidance.
Thank you.
I just want to build on what Nada said. She makes a very important point that, lift women up. When you are in a position of power, make sure that you're using your power to lift women up. And I think very early on, I think when we were doing bias, there was something that stood out for me that, women, then sometimes they break the ceiling. You either become queen bee because, you are the only woman in the room and, you are lording it over. And, as soon as another woman comes, you feel that, there is encroachment. And then, or you have the mother-in-law syndrome, which is basically that, okay, I came up the hard way. So, you also show that, you can make those sacrifices. And so I think one of the other things that us as women who have made it to this level need to be aware that we are not being the queen bee or the mother-in-law. And I think one of the policies that I have used, is that lift as many women up. So whether they come to me for mentoring or not, every person I'm touching, I'm always actively coaching them, sharing with them, saying that, don't make this mistake, think about this. But at the end of the day, accepting it or not accepting it is their thing. But, I do that actively. And when I'm sitting in on people discussions, and let's say there are three of us in the room, and most of them are men, and a woman is being talked about, I actually say that, what was in Bambi, that, don't say anything if nothing is going to come out good. So, keep quiet. So, it's better to keep quiet rather than, sometimes you have this feeling, yeah, she's good in this, but, maybe this is something she can, but, just keep quiet. Don't say anything. If you can say something good, say something good. Otherwise, keep quiet. Let the women rise and be the active sponsor.
There's also, one of the biggest things that some women face is when they take a sabbatical to either have children or, get a degree or what have you, and then they come back to the workplace and then nobody wants to hire them because of the gap. So I don't know if you've had direct experience with that, but Lalit Naga Lalasa is asking, she's a mother of a 4-year-old girl. She hasn't worked in 7 years and she's looking to come back to the workplace. Do you have any advice for her when it comes to, finding employers, how to address the HR kind of, explaining her value? Any tips you can share on that before I move on to the next question? I'm trying to take as many of them as possible, but I can feel your pain, Lalit. Don't worry. You're going to get the most empowered women today giving you advice.
So I can answer that because I did take a sabbatical. Sorry, no, you go.
No, go ahead. I don't have a first-hand experience in this, so maybe you as a mother can help with that.
So I did take a sabbatical. I did take a 2-year sabbatical, like I said. But to be honest, in that sabbatical, I had the option to get back to Unilever, but I decided to quit and actually join AstraZeneca. So to be fair, I think if you keep updated during your, you keep updating your own skills during your, sabbatical or what you're taking. And then you need to brush up a little bit on, what's happening in the industry, etc. when you go back. I don't think today it's taboo in order for you to come back after maternity break. It is accepted. I won't say it is, it's easy, but it is accepted. But do ensure that you have reskilled yourself for the 4 or 5 years that you've been away from industry and come back. And if you can demonstrate that, I think that will be a big game changer for you when you get into the interview panel. That would be my advice.
Amazing. Thank you, Anita. Nada, do you want to add to that? You've done the sabbatical, came back, found a man in your job.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think like, using that time to gain new skills. I mean, sometimes even reflecting on where you want to go next. I mean, it could be like that sabbatical could be a great period for reflection and understanding what the next journey would look like. But definitely, I agree with everything that Anita has said in terms of, brushing up your skill, being, at par with what's happening in the industry.
Thank you. Safdar Akbar says, what kind of action do we need to take when somebody's being treated with bias? Like, is there a kind of process or procedure to deal with someone who's dealing with bias? Can they actually go to HR and say I'm being biased against, and that's why I'm not progressing in my career? Is that present in companies in your experience? Do they have that kind of window?
Yeah, they do. I think like many organizations have those policies in place. There's strict, procedure protocols on how to, raise a complaint. Usually it's with HR, but there, sometimes a committee independent committee that deals with those cases. But I have to say, not many organizations have this. But even if they don't have a formal process for complaining, personally, I think everyone should speak up. I mean, there would be avenues to speak up. The worst thing that you can do is watch this happening and not say anything. And, what do you have to lose? I know retaliation is there. I mean, we cannot deny that retaliation could be an outcome of speaking up. But I guess if we don't speak up, nothing will change.
Agreed.
I don't know, Anita, if you want to add something or.
So I think, like I said, I think in my initial comment, we all have bias. We all have bias. So for example, when I was doing like split family, my husband was in Bangalore, I was in Bombay, or I was in London, they were in Bangalore. I would have colleagues who look at me and say, how are you doing this? And sometimes they might even make a snide remark about this. Now, I mean, you have to just stand up and say that, this is what I want, and, just be upfront about. So that's one way of tackling it. But if you're getting unfairly treated because of the bias, someone's bringing down, like, they don't give you equal opportunity on the audit role that Nada was mentioning, or, you're not getting the right performance rating because someone is unfairly, then I think HR and, getting into the code of business principles that many organizations have, and standing up for what you believe in and what you need, should have, is absolutely important. Otherwise, call it out. So for example, I remember sitting in one people conversation, and there was this lady who came up, from maternity break, and we had a really exciting role about financial inclusion and something that we were doing with a bank in rural areas. And the whole committee over there, senior leaders of finance, they said, we shouldn't give this role to X because, she's just come back from maternity break. And I said, I'm sorry, you are not the one to make that decision. Please offer her that role and let her make the choice whether she wants the role or not, and can she do it or not. And then they did that, and lo and behold, the lady said, I have a great support system at home and I can do the role. And then people's eyes open up and then say, so sometimes it's intervention, like Nada said, be the active sponsor. And where it is unfair treatment and you feel you're being persecuted and it'll impact your career, HR and making sure you use all official channels to bring that up is really important.
Thank you for that. I wanted to kind of get also, Noura, you mentioned you may not have the personal experience on, the receiving end, but maybe you've encountered this as a potential sponsor. Like, have you seen that when you were on the, on the employer side and one of your team members or someone who was coming in for the job, did you lift them up? Have there been any examples of the sort?
You mean from a short,
short or long? Whatever experience that you've had with this, because
of course, and also during it's not only when you leave and come back, sometimes also during the pregnancy and the newborn experience. Actually, it happened with me with one of my direct staff, and he's a father. And before they give the law, the Saudi law now, they give you as a father, I think, I'm not sure, maybe Nada, you will correct me after the session. Maybe they give them a 3 days now, but before that, a long time ago, mother, they have a legal leave for to give birth and to take care of the child, but the father is not considered. Even to attend his birth, the childbirth, you need to go and excuse to attend, and of course, you have to be there for your kids if you have, if this is not your first baby, the mother, and then to take care of them. Your life, the whole life is changed for a month, minimum a month to 2 months. They will come and speak about it. I remember one individual happened to me, and it happened to be, he's an accountant, and he's just an accountant, it's not, and I wasn't his immediate. There was a supervisor, and I'm the director. But sometimes the employee, they will come to the person in top to just make sure that, because if you said yes, the supervisor will say yes. And the supervisor is a man, and I'm a woman. Women usually known to be more compassionate toward others. And also we do not ask why you want this. And actually it's their right not to ask. If someone wants to excuse or have, sometimes off, even if not taken from their parents, I think you need to cooperate with them and support them. Ruba, there is a questions that I really want to, I pick them from the chat. Someone asked about what's the difference between sponsorship and mentorship. If we can elaborate in the sponsorship, because it's very important. Sponsorship and mentorship are so important. In my opinion, the timeline is where it matters most. Let's say you have 15 years. So your first 5 years, maybe you will heavily, or let's say 80% focus on the mentorship, like your mentor. And of course, early on, if you have a sponsor, that's really gonna make your progress much quicker. Let's say the next 5 years, which is in the middle of career, it's both. You need the mentorship and sponsorship. When you reach to a certain level, let's say you already have 15 years of experience, for that period, the third phase, actually you will need more sponsorship than mentorship. So mentorship more when you are starting your first job or your first 5 years in a career. Whereas sponsorship, when you want to go to the next level in a leadership role. Now, mentorship is someone who is really, you trust his ethics, values, expertise, and also he done it some way, and also he's someone, he can welcome you to exchange learning, because it's a two-way, two directions. And this is a lifelong journey. I myself have a mentorship, and I will continue, inshallah, to have a mentorship. Now, the sponsorship is where the people really, and the question specifically was, say, can you give the details about the sponsorship? Sponsorship, I will say it in plain English, is grooming. You need someone to find someone in your organization or in your career, in your craft, let's say in your community, as an accountant who is well known, even if he's not or she's not. You see, I said he, I didn't say she. This is a bias in the language, by the way. Your mind is already all the time. If he's a someone in the top, it's more he or rather than she. Again, you find that person who have the network, the desire to help you, and the time and the belief that you have what's kept to be a next leader in that domain, in that organization, in that profession. So my advice, if you have a profession like engineering or accounting, have someone to sponsor you in your craft, in your or let's say in your profession, and have someone in your organization, because your profession is going to stay with you. but your organization, maybe you will move from organization to organization, and people usually move. But in a lifetime, you are more or less within a career. So we address accountant here, but it's not necessarily that we, the majority of our audience are accountant or with a finance background, but not necessarily that all of them. So if you are an engineer, find someone in your profession. If you are a physician, same. If you are an accountant, a lawyer, and also in your company, who is powerful and nice and helpful to help you. The equivalent will be the angel investor who sponsor entrepreneur in the private sector, and they believe in their ideas and their product, and they will give them the money or the capital to start their company. So I hope it's clear now.
No, it is actually very much. And thank you for picking that one up, because I mean, there are a lot of questions that were asked that you kind of, all of you answered indirectly. So you have spoken about individual times where you felt you were treated with bias, and you explained how you dealt with it. We've done the connection between sponsorship and mentorship and how integral they are to each other. Ghinwa Awada had spoken about, you know, the working hours and that the culture of flexibility is a must, but she also now is saying it's so inspiring to hear that. Unfortunately, we have seen a lot of cases where women in leadership are the ones who do not support and lift other women up. They are so tough on women with respect to performance and work-life balance because they don't want to seem lenient or flexible and weak. What do you have to say about that, ladies?
Can I answer that
Please,
question?
please go ahead.
Now, some women, they dress like women. I call them the men in skirts. So actually inside, even hormonal, their masculine side, we as a human, from a biological point of view, psychological point of view, behavioral point of view, we have masculine and feminine side of us. And we will, if it's balanced, we are happy and everyone is happy. If it's unbalanced, well, that's not good for some of the people in the room. So some women, when they join, especially, you know, my generation, I don't think it's going to be a problem in the future. But let's say during the 80s, the 90s, the early 20s, women didn't see examples. So they copy men. They speak like men, talk like men, act like men, compete like men, wear skirt, but they are men actually. So you are dealing with a man, a very maybe masculine man. And there is men in life where you find them dress in suits, but they so compassionate, they so collaborative, they so nice. So actually don't label people based on their birth certificate, male or female, because really some women are, I would say, masculine, 100% masculine. Some men are feminine. And I have seen example where there is some men really, they are too shy to speak. They are too, you know, I have seen example of men who really, you know, I think they are lean toward their feminine side. So my advice to you is that since you recognize it in that person, try to see a way where you you know, find the support within the organization, where you find someone who's really balanced. We are not encouraging people to be pro-women or pro-men. Actually, we need a balanced workplace for everyone. And that's the natural. That's why we call for a functional workplace. If it's a functional, it will serve everyone. So maybe your problem, it's not a man or a woman or a person or a group. Maybe you are in a place where the culture is not the best for you. Try to address issue if you can in a nice way, and also you know, if you cannot find that to support you, please move early. There is a lot of places where you can flourish and not only survive.
Thank you, Noura. Nada, Anita hinted at it earlier, the queen bee effect. I think women have a natural inclination to expect other women to understand them. And I agree with Noura that it's not just because someone is gender-based, they have to act in a certain way. But how has that been from your view? Like, do you think that we need to kind of nurture and educate women to be a bit more empathetic towards others? Do we have to breed that culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first, I think that a good leader is a good leader irrespective if they are woman or man. And I've seen really good leaders, man, and I've seen like really bad leaders, both man and woman. It doesn't matter. But I think I talked about modeling behavior. It's really, really powerful. When other women see how you behave and that you're flexible, you can understand where they're coming from, you give them the flexibility, you understand their circumstances, they in turn will do the same. So modeling the behavior is very important. And yeah, I can totally see the experience of the person who raised that question. I've been in that situation and it's really, really bad. And I can't agree more with Noura that sometimes you fight, you try to change, but when you're not capable, you have choices. Everyone needs to understand that we all have choices, and we should not stay in a place that would pull us down, that will make us question our self-confidence and what we're worth. This is really important message, I guess, for everyone. I mean, there's only so much we can do. I think the world is changing. People are more tolerant. They understand there are avenues to raise complaints, to raise our voices. But let's face it, we will not always, all the time, be successful in driving that change. And this is where we need to evaluate the option and look at the choices out there.
I know that we went over the allocated time, but this conversation is very hard to kind of slow down. And, with all these questions, so I will have to kind of bring it to almost a close. I'll just drop one more question just because in closing, I'm sure after this wholesome conversation, maybe there is some, advice or some lesson that you would like to pass on, or what would you like to come out of this discussion? Like, what's that little one thing that you hope you've instilled in today's attendees? So please, maybe Nada, just kick it off, and then we'll move to Anita and then to Noura, please.
Yeah, I guess, we talked about everything. The one thing that I would say, besides that, we all have choices and we need to be vocal, I would say, when each one of the people who are attending and other become a leader, look back and lift as you climb. I mean, Anita talked about it. It's really important to look back and try to support as many men and women, because, after all, when you look back in your career and you evaluate what is your greatest success, I guess we all would agree, is when we found that we were able to support other people and reach their potential, their full potential, and become the people they want to become. I think this is really, really important, for me at least, and I guess for many other people will share this view.
Thank you. Anita?
So I think I'll start with something we haven't talked about, for women especially, is basically, people who are our support system. Because if women have to be really, successful in a workplace, it's really important that, the support system we have. And one course I attended recently called Destiny Helpers. People who are your destiny helpers. They could be your guardian angels, your family support, etc. Or they could be people who are really gifted and who help you out. People who can make your connections, who help you build the network. So find a way of getting your equivalent of destiny helpers who will help you. So that's the first thing. And I think we all need it, because we are doing much more than what, let's say, men normally do. We are wearing that we're multitasking on multiple fronts, and then being successful in a job where, it demands almost 150%. So that's the first thing, foundation. And then I would just say, believe in yourself, lean in, and lift up as we talked about, and shine on.
Beautiful. Thank you. Noura.
My message will be, you are an accountant. Let's assume that the people who's attending the IMA are an accountant. You are an accountant. So be accountable for your career. This is first and most. Be accountable for your profession as an accountant, and be accountable for your society. I would ask anyone who attended this and see that they have the desire, the burning desire, the willing, the commitment to go straight to the Lean In website, where there is a lot of resources, open a cycle in the region, and I will view, after the session, I will view, this is my contribution after this session, I will view all the Middle East. The region we cover in Garuba is Middle East and India, or just Middle East?
Middle East.
Today, Middle East. So yeah. I will browse all Middle East regions, and if I see someone who open a circle called IMA Circle to support their community, be it in Saudi Arabia, in GCC country, in the North Africa, anywhere in the Middle East, I myself will dedicate my time, my expertise, and my network to help people who will join this circle. And that's the way we contribute to the issue. And I acknowledge the contribution of one leader who created this awareness for the last decade. And I think we have free resource and media in that platform, and we can work from there. This is subjected for the approval of IMA because it's a legal entity. Just throwing an idea. So if anyone communicate directly with Ms. Ruba, and if they approve that there is a cycle, because in my region, in Saudi Arabia, at least I see something for the accountant KPMG, which is, KPMG is one of the big four, but unfortunately it's not an active. Because I know, because I'm using this platform for maybe actively since 2017 and 18, I was really very active in that domain. So that's my message, being accountable.
Thank you, Noura. Even our colleague from Japan, Nina Michelle Kim, is also listening in, and she says very informative and good idea from Noura about forming an IMA circle for the Middle East. So yeah, I was going to kind of close this off, but Dr. Maha Shalkami, a senior economist at MENA HPF, has an extended question, but I think maybe one of you wants to weigh in. So I know that we've run the course of the session and we're beyond, but if you want to still stay on and listen to what we have to say, and can I still hold you for a few more minutes, ladies? Or am I?
Sure.
Okay, so Dr. Maha says the bias problem is a cultural and educational one, and a political one too. It can mainly be solved through gender equality education, starting in kindergarten curriculums and onwards. Also, the media sector that plays a very vital role in changing perspectives through TV dramas, movies, advertisements, kids' cartoons, etc. Finally, if there's a political will, government can enforce laws against bias in corporations, companies, organizations, institutions, and universities, etc. Literally everywhere across the nation. With time, gender equality would be instilled into the institutional kind of framework. It's all about policies. She says it's all about policies. If governmental has this vision, it will enforce it. Also in the Middle East, it must involve the religious sector, and renewing religious speech for women is a must to help with gender equality. What is your opinion towards these 5 solutions: education, media, law, government will, and religious speech? Thank you, Dr. Maha. That was we cannot close without answering this question.
Okay, can I answer
sorry,
briefly? Can I answer just briefly?
Please.
It's not an answer, just my point of view, and I will leave it to Anita and Nada, and I'm sure they have really very insightful feedback in that question. I've been through a similar situation where this raised, and I would say something that I heard it. I'm not, implying this is my idea, but I heard it from Dr. Jordan Peterson, and you know that he's also active in things like this. He's a well-known psychologist. He's a university professor from Canada. And he provided an example about the Scandinavian countries. The Scandinavian women are the countries, they are the top in the world when it's come to STEM and the leadership and women in power and all of that. But research show that even with this empowerment within the society, women by choice didn't join even some profession like engineering or computing or mathematics, which is more dominant by men. This is just to just simplify the question rather than to go to a leadership, but it starts from education, let's say. So his opinion is not only political forcing this. He said you need this social re-engineering have two components. And it's actually you can find his lecture because he's very active in he have a platform all for psychology in the YouTube. So what he said there is a biological difference and there is also a social difference, which is based on the society, how we throughout the history, form our concept about things and people, and it's a cultural thing. And he said when you really engineer it, you can re-engineer the social, but you cannot do it with the biology, and that's a problem. There is a limitation within women from a biological point of view. So the conversation or the narrative that it's a political thing or a religion thing, yeah, there is some impact. It's make it worse actually, but it's not the main issue. The main issue, it's down to these two factors, social, and again, social include the religion and the political part and biological. This is the two factors that impact the equity.
Thank you. Anita, you were keen to kind of jump in on that one. Do you want to?
I actually fully endorse what Dr. Maha is mentioning. I think she's bang on. What we need as women is the removal of bias so that we get equality of opportunity. And I think what Jordan Peterson argues against is actually equality of outcome. Outcome has, biological, etc., which I get. You can't guarantee equality of outcome, but we want equality of opportunity. Mm-hmm. Whether or not I get a job should be something I should determine, not a law or society or someone sitting as a biased person in front of me. Now, the only thing that I'll add to what Dr. Maha said is family. Because she talked about, I said family, because most of our education alone doesn't help, because children role model what they see in the family. If they see both parents equal, then they realize that the boys realize they need to be doing, a fair share of the unpaid work at home, and vice versa. The only other thing that I add is family, because that's where the role modeling really starts.
Agreed. There was one stage before kindergarten, and that's family. Agreed.
Yes.
Nada, what's your view on, so now it's no longer a 5-step initiative, it's a 6-step initiative because it has family in the foundational spectrum.
Now, I really can't agree more, and there's little I can add. I think, as we said, achieving gender equality and, eliminating bias or reducing bias is a journey and not a destination. And what Dr. Maha said, really sums up this journey, sums up the stakeholders that need to be involved in that journey. It's a long journey. I would just maybe add one more thing. I like the media because it's really, really powerful in impacting and changing behavior. And the more stories we share, I think coming up and sharing stories about biases that people have been subjected to, we tend to suppress them, but it's okay to talk about them. And I think what we learned, having platform where we can share those experiences in a safe space, I think will really help people dealing with those biases.
Amazing. I mean, this was a brilliant session. Honestly, it was so informative and so insightful. And I know we couldn't read all of the comments, but a lot of the participants were thanking you for your empowering and encouraging kind of feedback and insight on how to get back into their career, how to kickstart their career, how to rise to the top, how to break through the glass ceiling. So if anything, I think the biggest takeouts for us today are that, first of all, we need more of these conversations. Secondly, that it takes women like you to come up and share that experience and empower and shed light and then lift all these others up as well. That mentorship is not enough on its own, that we need kind of sponsorship programs, that, the gender bias is only broken when the commitment is top down and not in any other format. And also, if anything, a big one for me was that no matter what environment you are working in, you always have the power to kind of push through. And that's come from women who started their careers more than 20 years ago, and they had to push through a lot of, kind of gender bias communities and gender bias industries. Nada being one who started in Lebanon in the finance and accounting arena and one of the big four. So, you've seen some examples of how bias can be broken. And it's a continuous conversation because it should continue to happen on 6 different areas of life. So family, and then education from kindergarten onwards, religion in the community and all that. So I want to thank everyone who joined us and everyone who actually stayed with us till now. Thank you. We hope that this kind of inspires your direct circle and the circles around you. We hope that we do inspire change somehow and that we do together break the bias. Ladies, Nada, Noura, Anita, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really, really inspirational for me too. As empowered as I think I am, I think I go away today with even more of it. Thanks to you guys. You ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruba, for a lovely session, and thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.